You can just go ahead, share whatever you want.
Hi, I'm Yuri Polozov from Russia. I'm libertarian and I was active libertarian activist and educator in Russia. And so I was asked if I may share some differences between my country and USA. So what exactly would you like to know?
Just some of the things you touched on about like if people speak out in a protest or try to even hold a sign or a rally, just like the difficulty and potential repercussions.
Yeah, so we had a lot of political freedom after Soviet Union collapsed, and generally it was okay to rally, to protest, but step by step after Putin came to power, he started to shrink this political freedom. And even though our constitution claims that we do have freedom of gatherings, they made the law that you should ask for permission from government if you want to have political rally on some square, on some street. And generally it could be as small as, I don't know, even if it's 2 people, you still should ask permission, and they're making this law stricter and stricter, and they claim that you can gather in certain places, like near the place of public transportation, something like that. And it's kind of artificial law because there are always some people, for example, advertising business. Sometimes there are people who are for some religious purposes gathering. But if you're like in a position, if you're against, then the law is against you. Yeah, and another problem in Russia is that it's not only law, it's sometimes that police is acting as some kind of mafia, like, for example, the law was allowing for one person to be with sign, but sometimes what police was doing, they are sending some kind of another fake person who was joining you, and then they were claiming, oh, you are not longer alone, and they were arresting you. Sometimes they were doing like, we were asking for permission, like we should ask 10 days ahead if we need, for example, to gather 100 people in one square. And it's difficult by itself because sometimes you want to say right away if something important happened today. Sometimes you want to have rally tomorrow, but this law doesn't allow it.
What happens if people don't get permission and they go out there and they do that anyway?
So generally, police saying, "Oh, this rally is not authorized. You should go away," and then they start arresting people. Generally, sometimes it's more violent, sometimes less. Often it's hard to predict. Sometimes they're beating even old people and women. Sometimes they just arrest you. And also it was bad, but it's getting worse. Like before, fines was like, if you're arrested, it was like $30, and even some people were not paying it. And after a while, it was taken away from you. But now, first of all, they make it larger. It could be like $1,000, or if you organize it could be like $10,000. And they may claim, oh, if you were crying, like if you were shouting some political speech, it means you're an organizer. And this money is quite big for us. for most of us. And
So what are they so afraid of? What do they want to get permission or clamp down on people about?
so Putin is kind of dictator, and he sees that in other countries dictators sometimes lose power, and like it was in Egypt, like before it was in some neighboring countries like Orange Revolution in Ukraine or Rose Revolution in Georgia. So often these revolutions was when people saw that elections were rigged, and the same in Russia. Like 1 year ago, more people get angry that elections were rigged. Like first they rigged elections to parliament and then presidential elections, and people were protesting, and some people were hoping that Putin will go, but if he will go, he committed so many crimes against people in Russia that most probably he will end up in the prison, and of course he don't want it, and his friends don't want it, so he just trying to keep power and to calm people with this oppression. So that's what's going on, and so when we see some materials from USA, like Derek J's victimless crime spree, some of my friends were shocked that they thought that USA is a free country, but sometimes here also people may get arrested for nothing, and sometimes cops also not like the best moral behavior, not always like protecting a real law, but more like keeping power, like their position. But in Russia it's much worse. So in Russia they often even don't pretend. Sometimes they are connected with mafia, and they make easier. So sometimes they arrest you for nothing if they want to stop some kind of political rally, and then they are saying, "Oh, you were swearing in the public, you were saying some dirty words, and so that's why we arrested you." And people trying different stuff. Some people were making tape, gluing their mouth, and still they were arrested. Some people were making video evidence that they were not saying anything dirty, that they were not making obstacles to arrest or something. But often, if it's political case, that we don't have independent judges. They're just saying, "Oh, why shouldn't we believe to policemen?" And or they're showing, "Oh, we don't want to watch your video." Or maybe your video is incomplete. So it's often like that.
So what advice do you have for somebody who might see this in the U.S. or even in Russia? You know, why is this important to think about?
My advice, as they say, if you don't care about politics, one day politics will take you, or something like that. So many people, they don't care, but it's important to protect the political and civil liberties, because you don't know where it will lead. Today they take away your right to protest, and tomorrow when something will happen to you, to your house, you will find out that there are no protection. There are no real opposition, there's like free media which may have some influence, and then you are in trouble.
Are you seeing many people going around like just putting on the website, "Hey, I got arrested for this, and can you help me out?" And or is it just that's pretty risky?
There are some people and there are some support. Sometimes we can support, we can help if person was arrested for some false accusation. Sometimes finally charges are dropped. But sometimes if it's very political, like we had the richest man in Russia, Khodorkovsky. He had some political ambitions and he was trying to make business more like open, not some shadow accounting style. But Putin put him into prison and then make the second sentence, and now thinking about making some new accusation against person who already served more than one term in prison. So many people are trying to help something, they have information. The people who heard about this, how it was in the court, they saying it's just some kind of Kafkian, some kind of stupid false accusations, but it doesn't make difference so far. No, it helps open eyes to some people, but it doesn't make difference. Another problem we have is like this war on terror. So in Russia also sometimes they may take person who is in opposition to government and then claim that he is a terrorist. And then, even if he has a lawyer, this lawyer has no rights to say about this case to the media or to anybody because it's secret. So there are people in Russia who are put into prison for political case, but nobody knows about it because it's kind of secret cases.
What are the prisons like in Russia?
It's much worse than here, and prison in general is not the best place to spend your time, but in Russia it's insulting people, and sometimes they're just trying to extract more money from people. Recently there was some kind of riot when people in prison was rioting, and their relatives who were outside prison also were trying to call for justice and were beaten by special riot police. But finally they said yes, there were cases in that prison that officials were torturing people inside to so that their relatives would bring more money to these officials. So, and I'm sure it's not the only case.
So, what do you tend to be optimistic or pessimistic, or are you just like in terms of how things look there or here, or the scheme of things, the sharing of ideas, or is it getting more difficult or not?
Future is generally unclear, especially in Russia, because we have Putin. He is taking all political power, and of course it's unstable. If some of his friends would fight against him, or if he, lose his health, it's like there could be some revolution one day, but you never know when it will happen, like in 1 month or in 70 years. It's hard to predict. So right now, situation in Russia probably changing to the worst because he is trying to make it stricter. But at the same time, more people became aware about Putin, about how bad situation is. So it's unclear. So for me, it's very important that there are places in the world where more hope for, how you say it, liberty in our lifetime. So for me, Free State Project is one of such places where I see that people may make real change. Like near Russia, the Putin's friend Lukashenko in country Belarus, and after running against president in presidential elections, most other candidates they get arrested and put into prison. So it's kind of difference. Here, of course, Ron Paul, for example, he didn't won. Gary Johnson didn't won election, but they're not in the prison. They still may go to some other elections to tell people their message, not from behind bars. So you should like cherish that freedom which still exists here and maybe try to promote it, for example, here in New Hampshire, where I think it's possible.
Excellent. I appreciate